Thank you for having me. First, shout out to Gutierrez Group for putting this event together, and then the sponsor R2R. Yeah, so thank you for doing that. And then also thank you for everybody in the room today. Just like I think the first step to any sort of like change is like action taker. So everybody here is an action taker just for being here. So I appreciate that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into our agenda. So my name, I go by Omid, the Rad Investor. So before we get started, if you guys can grab your phones and look me up on IG. So Omid, the Rad Investor. What I'm going to ask you guys to do is, as part of your process, as you guys are growing your business, and it doesn't have to necessarily even be real estate, just recording your process. So I'm going to give out a book at the end and some shirts. So so if you guys tag me, I may hook you guys up. So I appreciate that. I'm going to go into Airbnb, and there's a lot of talk about Airbnb being dead. So we'll talk about that and whether there's this Airbnb bust or not. And then I'm going to go into 3 simple ways to look at how to scale your business. So we'll go into that and kind of where you fit, because sometimes I think there's this notion that you have to know everything, and you don't have to know everything. You just have to have the right people and systems in place to grow a business. And so I'll go into a case study, just kind of give an example of the business and kind of where we are. And then just some high level overview as far as like automation and some tools that you can use to kind of grow your business. All right, so this is me. So I'm born, raised Southern California, I have 3 kids. Age 2, 4, and 6. I used to work a corporate job. So I worked a corporate job for 18 years. So I'll get into that a little bit as far as like how I jumped into short-term rentals. Essentially, I'm a best-selling author. I'm a podcast host for the Find Your Freedom podcast. I've grown the portfolio that we have now from 0 to 20 plus units in the past 3 years. So I'll kind of get into that and kind of walk you guys through the journey. And, first, yeah, so like anybody else, I wanted to kind of grow my business. I did all the traditional things, go to school, go to college, try to get good grades, get your corporate job. The goal was always just to make money and live the American dream. So my parents are both immigrants. And, I went through the whole process, got married over here, had the kids, and then COVID happens. And so I was always the first one in the office, the last one to leave. And the one thing is I didn't really spend that much time with my kids. So when COVID happened, I was forced to be at home. It kind of opened my eyes to kind of being around my family. And so what that did was it kind of sparked my interest in trying to find a different way from like the traditional corporate job. And so I jumped into short-term rentals. And so I'm going to walk you guys kind of through that and that process and how it happened and how that's kind of really freed up my time to kind of do other things and reprioritize my priorities. So who thinks Airbnb is dead? There you go. Okay, yeah. There you go. So yeah, there's actually a lot going on in the media. The past 2 years was kind of like the Airbnb gold rush. So what happened is Airbnb became really popular. Nobody had anywhere to go. So anything that was local, that was drivable, a lot of that was like national parks, it became really popular. And so you had a lot of these influencers who came out and said, hey, I'm making $10,000 a month, Airbnb. And so a lot of people started jumping in, not really understanding the numbers. So I'm going to kind of go into that a little bit. But there's these influencers, and they said that, hey, I'm in this vacation rental market, or I'm in that vacation rental market. People jumped in, and what ended up happening is they started saying, hey, I'm not making any money. Or, hey, this is way more work. This influencer said it was only 3 hours a week, and I'm spending like 30 hours a week. So it got a lot of people thinking, this is not like the right fit. And so a lot of people are exiting the Airbnb space but they were not necessarily looking at Airbnb as like a business. They were looking at it either as a side hustle, or they didn't have the right people or processes in place. So I'm going to kind of go into that a little bit as far as like the processes and how you can set yourself up for success. But yeah, just a little data. So there's only Booking.com, TripAdvisor are the only two other websites that have more traffic than Airbnb. So Airbnb has more traffic than Vrbo and Marriott combined. So there's actually still a very high demand for Airbnbs. But what I think the opportunities are going to be acquiring Airbnbs and also running them appropriately. So we'll get into that a little bit. Okay. So when I first started, I was working the corporate job. I had money, but I had no time, and I didn't really have the knowledge for Airbnbs. So what I did was I partnered with two people, and one in particular, he had money as well, but we were trying to figure out how can we jump into Airbnbs, and this happened during COVID. So this was COVID, summer of COVID. We had a buddy who jumped into Airbnbs and said, hey, I'm making a lot of money. I'm in the Smoky Mountains, and who knows where the Smoky Mountains is? Yeah, so I didn't know where the Smoky Mountains was. So I guess it's in Tennessee, and it's the most visited national park in the country. So, but at the time, he's like, hey, I'm making all this money. You need to come in and come join us. So at the time, it was low risk for me, and I always dabbled in real estate before. But so I was like, okay, let's take a risk. It wasn't going to cost that much money. My buddy at the time, his wife, really wasn't working. So I said, hey, how about she runs it? She kind of learns, and we kind of figure it out as we go. So that's essentially what we did. So we bought a 5-bedroom, 5-bath cabin in the Smoky Mountains. So at the time, so the purchase price was $590. They had these loan products, 10% down loan. So we were all in for $60,000. And at the time when we were purchasing the property, they were the gross revenues were in the 80,000 range. So the past 2 years, it was in the 80s. That first year we took it on, it grossed $156,000. So let me pause for just a moment. So imagine you have a long-term rental here locally, and you're paying rent, let's say $4,000 a month times 12 months, that's $48,000. So with Airbnbs, you're going to make double to triple the amount of a typical long-term rental. So we profited $84K that first year. So essentially, our down payment was pretty much paid off. So 38% cash on cash return. So for a little bit of perspective on that, stock market, what's the average of the stock market? 7%. So if you put $10,000, what would that be? Or the $60,000, you'd make maybe $5,000 on a full year's return. So, and the following year, it did 57 in profit. So just that alone, it paid itself off, and it created seed money to invest in other properties. So essentially, that's what we did. So again, 95% cash on cash. This doesn't even include appreciation. So the place we purchased it for $590, even in the market that we're in right now, that's $1 million property. So that alone, I think about my 401k. So when I worked my corporate job, I did my 401k 18 years. I had a bigger amount of 401k than a lot of my peers. So I spent 18 years trying to build it. And with that alone, it was $600K in my 401k. And it taken me 18 years to accumulate that. In that 1 year or in a couple years, I mean, I already, which I'll show you guys, in the past 3 years, I've exceeded that 401k that took me such a long time. And I maxed out every year. Those maxed out contributions, 20% of my salary with company match. And this allowed me to grow the wealth faster. So, all right. So during that time, we purchased the one. Then we're like, hey, this actually might not be a side hustle. Let's try to grow this. So my buddy, he's like, hey, there's this national park. It's called Joshua Tree National Park. I'm from Southern California. I've never been there. Have you guys been to Joshua Tree? Yeah. Okay. There you go. Okay. So some of us have, some of us haven't. But my idea of vacation is I go to the beach. I want some blue water. So Joshua Tree to me was my own personal bias. I was not into Joshua Tree. It wasn't my jam. But he's like, hey, look at the numbers. Year after year, there's increased visitation, and there's not a lot of Airbnbs. So we went and we purchased a tiny home. So we purchased this tiny home right here. It was right under $300,000. And we put $15,000 into it. So we furnished it, put a mural, and it did relatively well. I think we were grossing 70-ish, 80K annually on that property. But what we had to do is over time, we had to keep putting money into it to kind of make it stay competitive. We added amenities. And but what it allowed us to do is it allowed us to build the knowledge and experience and learning a market, knowing what amenities are preferred for a particular market. And again, we're slowly starting to run out of money, and then our time is being occupied because we're starting to run, more properties. So we went from one property, we ended up going up to 4 properties over the course of, I'm going to say 6 months, and then we ran out of money. So when you think about your own journey, think about, are you in a position where you have money, where you have time, or you have knowledge? And leverage one of those things. So in this room, there's going to be different levels of experience and different people who have different skill sets and what they bring to the table. But as you're thinking about putting together your own business, think about in these 3 categories where you can bring value. And the thing is, I've worn different hats over time. So originally, I was just the money guy, and I just worked and I helped a little bit here and there, but I didn't have any technical skills. Over time, I slowly started building knowledge and experience as I replaced my income and walked away from my W-2. So a year ago, I walked away from my W-2 and I replaced my income with the short-term rental properties. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So we run out of liquidity. So at this point, and this is why I ask you guys to bring out your phones, is share your process. I think there's so much money out there, and I think the hardest thing to do is not necessarily the money piece. That's the easy piece. The hardest part is finding the deal and having the knowledge. And so if you guys start building that, you have your one proof of concept, you start building that, and you start sharing that process as you begin from step 1 to now, then you can share that. So we went ahead and we shared our journey with people. And I built a relationship with this builder where over time we ended up purchasing, I don't know, I'm going to say like 10 plus tiny homes through partnerships. So what we did is we sourced people who had the money. They would qualify for the loan. They would bring the capital to as far as startup costs. And then we would run it and optimize it, and we would do distributions. And over time, we changed kind of the structure. So it was anywhere from, we brought 25% of the capital, they brought 75%, they owned 75%, we owned 25%. This one in particular was a 50-50. So they brought all the money, they qualified for the loan, and we just ran it, and we split 50-50 on the cash flow, 50-50 on the ownership. And this one in particular, what we did is we learned that the $15,000 wasn't enough to launch a property. So we changed the property launch amount. So price on this one was $330 with the down, but the startup cost was $30,000. So it was a little bit more capital heavy up front, but the cash to close was very similar. It was your 60-ish K, and the income. So this isn't updated, but I think we ended up grossing right under 90K on that particular property. So nowadays, when you look at properties across the country, something that will gross anywhere from 70 to 120K is going to typically be priced in the $600 to $1 million price point, depending on the market. So again, it did amazing. So 83% cash on cash, same thing. So we were trying to replicate this process. So we started kind of gaining momentum, and we kind of created this process. So if you guys want to, even if you guys want to take a picture of this, really it comes down to a couple things. It's the acquisitions piece, the operations piece, and then replicating it. And then within the acquisitions piece, and that's for like another day, another class, is like choosing the market, finding the funding, analyzing the property. But for purposes of like us today, it's analyzing like a pro, and then learning how to operate your property. But doing that will allow you to kind of have your proof of concept and then replicate that and then find money. Because at some point, we're going to run out of money. So this is a kind of a chart of from beginning to end of the past 2 years and the purchases, the month it took from the beginning to the past 2 years, and kind of the property price point, and how we were able to purchase these properties and grow in a very quick amount of time. The builder that I work with in Joshua Tree, he ended up just selling it to us off market. So we just created this funnel of people that were really interested in purchasing, and we just had this way of optimizing them, and we're able to scale really quickly. So this, this is powerful because this was what allowed me to kind of walk away from my W-2 a year ago. And but I think this is something that you guys can replicate, and that's kind of like my challenge to everybody is find where you are in that particular process. So, building the knowledge, time, money. I think that's super important, and you don't have to be an expert at everything. I think it's pick something that you're good at. So, like I have a friend right here. So maybe what I want you guys to do is raise your hands if you have any experience with running an Airbnb. There we go. Okay. So within the room right here, just look around and you can see some faces to determine, hey, maybe these are people that I might want to pick their brain. And is there, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but if you have capital that you're looking to invest, but maybe you don't have the knowledge or you don't have the time, raise your hand. Yeah. So yeah, there you go. Okay. Yeah. So so just look around, and then time. Some people have the time where they just need a mentor that will teach them, and then they can build the knowledge, and then they can run it. So just think about where you are in this, so that you can kind of grow your business. So and so building partnerships. So I think this can be kind of scary for a lot of people, but I think when you're in like-minded sort of environments, whether it's here or some sort of real estate group, or a big event, like a short-term rental event, you're going to find people that are going to be in all these different buckets. So even if it's not necessarily in this group, but if it's somewhere in some sort of event, just think in those sort of terms as far as what you're looking for. So whether it's the time, knowledge, money. Does anybody have an elevator pitch? Are they familiar with the elevator pitch? So I think that's just something to think about. Hi, my name is Omid. I secure double-digit cash-on-cash returns for investors. Do you know anybody who's interested? So something simple like that. And if somebody's interested, it will kind of continue the conversation. But again, look at this and determine, okay, do I want to wear the operations hat? Do I want to build the systems and processes? So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, because I think what's allowed us to grow is the systems. Has anybody hired a VA before? Okay. So what's your process of hiring a VA?
I will either gone through like Freelancer. I use that process, and I interview about usually about 3 freelancers.
Yeah.
Usually they're like in India, they're like in different countries.
Yeah.
At the time, I think during COVID, I paid them like $3 an hour.
Yeah.
Or like $5 an hour, and then I was just do like the initial sourcing, initial admin, so far to see which one had the best fit. And then from there, once they analyze the deals, then I would hire. There's other VAs that are more expensive. They're in the U.S., but they don't have that accent. When they get on the phone and they talk to the leads and so forth, so I'll use that.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So I want everybody to kind of think about a couple things when they're scaling or building any sort of business. So one, building out processes. So these are these are a couple of the different things that we do. So one, get a notepad and write down all the tasks that you do on a weekly basis. So start daily and figure out where you're spending your time. And then determine which are the lower level tasks that you can outsource to somebody else. So what you want to do is be able to build a business through leveraging other people's time, because you're essentially buying their time. Okay, so how many of you guys are familiar with Loom? Okay, so Loom is essentially, whenever I identify a task I don't want to do, I'm going to record myself on video doing it on the computer. And then I'm building a database of activities of all the tasks. So I'm cutting, like today, I'm cutting, we have the 20 plus properties. We have a cleaning company that does cleaning in Joshua Tree. But we have, the way we do our accounting is we have to pay our business. So we pay ourselves for the cleaning, but then on the backside, I also have to cut a bunch of checks to all our cleaners. So that takes me to, I'm gonna say it's gonna be like 50 plus checks. So that's something that's I can outsource to one of our VAs. So we have a VA team. So we use Upwork, but you can use I think there's jobonline.ph or jobs online. There's a bunch of different companies that you can use to outsource. So we outsource. We have 3 VAs specifically that do all the frontline messaging for Airbnb. So we try to create processes around every possible scenario where something can go wrong, and we create a standard operating procedures, SOPs, and we're still building it out. But the goal is, the moment you build this out and you have a consolidated, I'm gonna say database, you can hand that over to anybody, and they can just reference it, and they can reference the videos on what to do. And by doing that, you're removing yourself from the business. So we got the knowledge, we got the money, and then you're freeing up your time. So at that point, you're going from like a solopreneur to eventually the goal is you're like a manager, because now you're managing the VAs. But at some point, you hire then a head VA who becomes a manager, and then you become the CEO. And essentially, you're just there as a consultant, and it runs itself. So for our current business right now, we have 3 VAs, and they specifically, for 20 hours out of the day, they do all the frontline messaging. So when they're on my profile, and whoever is my guest thinks they're talking to me, but they're talking to the VA. So that's one piece. The second piece is we have another VA for bookkeeping. So all the little bookkeeping and staying organized, again, this is somebody that's remote from the Philippines as well. So they're getting paid anywhere from $3 to $6 an hour. So imagine, what is minimum wage here? It's 15, or I should, yeah. So how many VAs you can get 5 VAs for that price. And that can run your entire business of a portfolio. So there's like my buddy here, he does arbitrage. There's people who scale so quickly in arbitrage because they have VAs that do all the thing. Our VAs also, they do all the ordering for consumables. So we have the processes in place where we have a video, they can reference the video. And then whenever there's something that they have a question on and they have to reach out to us, then what we do is we have them create that process and build on this database. So one, inventory, we do the inventory of the tasks, we record everything out. We use Monday.com. So Monday is kind of the database of where we house all our processes. And then the goal is really, you work in the scope of genius. I'm not like the accounting master. I don't want to be the accountant. That's not what I do well. I want to be able to go source deals, connect investors, and that's where my time is best spent, and that's how I can scale faster. My ability to scale was I have the time to do that, where I'm not in the business, running the business. I'm doing this particular task that I think allow me to kind of be successful. So as you guys think about, and this is any business, this is just in general, think about all the tasks you're doing, and I think this is like a big component of it. Any questions on that? But so for our team, we have 3 that do the frontline messaging. They do order the consumables. We use Slack. So there's a task manager site. It's called Slack. Everybody connects into Slack. And I'll talk about that in operations a little bit. And everybody's communicating in Slack, which includes like my handyman. So we're self-managing everything, all the Airbnbs, and everybody's involved where we're not having to text message each other. It's all done through these platforms.
So that's actually so when you talk about frontline, not putting that out to somebody, but you said imagine yourself.
Yes. So when you first
differentiate the frontline messaging and your day-to-day stuff.
Yeah. So I think again, like going back to the task, like, hey, where is this in this proper, or like, hey, like I can't get the hot tub to work. What do I need to do? So I'm going to share some of the software that we use so that it minimizes the questions. But sometimes there's going to be questions that come through. Hey, this is broken. This is not working. Or hey, whatever the issue is for that particular property. Hey, this is where the VA will then communicate with the handyman directly, where I don't have to be involved. So just having those processes in place. So we create videos on everything. We create a walkthrough video on the property, so that way the VA can be familiar with the property, and they can say, hey, the consumables are in this drawer. We've systemized everything where every cabinet, we know exactly what's in that cabinet as far as inventory, and we have it all labeled. So the goal is to like dummy proof it to the point where we minimize questions, but if there is questions that come through, the goal is for the VAs to be able to respond to those. And let's say there's something's missing or we need to order something, they can do it on their own without us being involved. So I would say if there's a skill that you guys should develop or practice or join like a Facebook group or an accountability group, it would be analyzing. Because I think the hardest thing, like I said earlier, was not necessarily the money piece, but finding the deals. So this is just a high-level explanation of it, but there's a lot of calculators in the industry. A lot of the influencers all have their own version. I'm going to share my link tree. I have a version myself. You guys, it's a free downloadable. But you'll input some of this data, and then it'll spit out what your returns are. So within a buy box, you got to determine like what your buy box is as far as what the type of returns you're looking for, like as far as like a cash-on-cash return. And essentially what that is if you're investing, let's say, $84,000, this is calculating, this is the cash flow, and this is the return on an annual basis. So this doesn't account for appreciation. This doesn't account for tax benefits. So that's just like cherry on top. For me personally, I've always done 20% plus in this kind of environment right now. In the past, it was like 50% plus, but I would say 20% plus. But again, it depends. Some people, they just care about cash flow. They just want like a certain dollar amount that they're looking for because they want to replace their income. So again, these are different tools. You got the calculators, AIRBNB. It's a tool you can use. You got the Price Labs. You got Rabu. So Price Labs is the cheapest, where you can buy some data. This is for like a completely different like class, because just to explain this would take an hour in itself. But these are just some tools that you can use. But I would recommend, if there's one area where you want to get good at, YouTube this and spend time here, because I think the operations, it's going to come as you run your business. Okay, so automation. So we self-manage everything. So part of that is having a software stack. So we use quite a bit of software to be able to manage everything remotely. So we have 5 properties in the Smoky Mountains, and we have like 20 plus in Joshua Tree. I've been to the Smoky Mountains 3 times ever, and I've been at Joshua Tree maybe like, 10 times. So I don't have to go out there very often because we've tried to create processes in place, set up a team, but this is kind of like a basic software stack. I'll explain everything kind of in just a high-level overview. You're going to need a channel manager. So we use Hospitable, but there's other products out there. But I'm just going to speak on the ones that we've used. So Hospitable particularly, what you can do is you can create automated messaging. And the whole intent of that is, again, to save your time. So a lot of mom and pop operators, they go into Airbnb and they get a notification of a message on their phone, and they're messaging and then they're responding. So that takes time. That's 5 minutes here. That's 10 minutes there. That time adds up. So, but what Hospitable is really good at, what it's known for, is automated messaging. So it has some AI in there where if you ask a particular type of question, it'll automatically respond. And you can also create canned responses, meaning there's templates. So it's like there's common like questions. You can just click on the response and it just quickly responds on your behalf. So RVAs, this also integrates a pricing tool. So any sort of Airbnb, if you use the software or Vrbo, typically the pricing is going to be recommended at a lower amount because their incentive is to get, heads and beds. So they just want to be in the actual, like, they want as many people to come and book as they can. So pricing, the same property with a different pricing strategy can perform completely differently. So knowing how to leverage this Price Labs tool is really important. They have a lot of customization. But the idea is, what this does is you can set up the tools where it adjusts pricing daily. And so part of the algorithm with Airbnb is it tricks Airbnb into thinking you're constantly in the platform changing it, and it'll boost you up in the algorithm. And the goal is kind of like Amazon. When you're buying an Amazon, are you going to page 10? Or are you scrolling to page 1 or 2 to buy something? So the goal is to be in the page 1 and page 2, because if your property is optimized, it'll increase the gross revenues. So that goes into Breezeway. So Breezeway is a tool. Specifically what it does is it tells you where you are in the search algorithm. So it allows, they have a service where you pay $300 and they do a campaign to get your listing to be in the top 1 to 3 pages. And the goal behind that is if you can do that and you can stay up there, it's hard to get up there, but if you're there and you maintain it, there's a higher gross revenue. So the same 2 properties, like I said, the first cabin that we had, for example, the original operator was operating at $80,000 the past 2 years. We were able to get it over $130K. So I think the beauty of Airbnb is there is still a lot of upside if you are optimizing your listings, where the same property can do very differently depending on the operator. And that comes with practice and that comes with kind of learning, but that's an operations piece and you learn as you go. And of course, like social media, putting that out there, like making sure you're performing. Okay, so Rank Breeze is the one I mentioned, my apologies, was the one which shows you where you are in the algorithm. We use this because we're constantly looking for ways to be in the top 3. And we're comparing ourselves consistently. If you can do that with your listings and be in the top 3, you're going to have higher gross revenues. So you hear operators that aren't successful, they're not using these tools. And they're just kind of trying to do everything manually without using some of these software programs that help you optimize. Breezeway, so RVAs. So all of our requirement, so a lot of hotels use this, or sophisticated operators or operators that have a high number of properties. And what this particularly does is it's a centralized task manager where a cleaner goes to a property. And so I always get the question, hey, how do you manage cleaners? How do you know they're going to do a good job? Where our cleaners are required to log in. They have a certain set of questions that they have to answer. They have a checklist that they have to go through. They have to upload photos. And that's also for liability purposes. So there was an article recently where somebody died going into a hot tub because they got some sort of disease. I forgot what the name of the disease was. So we have our cleaners go in. They take a picture of the hot tub to make sure that it's clean. 2, they have a picture of the pH balance. So that way they can never say, hey, I got a skin issue as a result of your Airbnb. So it's like a liability piece, but it's also a piece of where our VAs can also create a task. So let's say they get a message on a platform. They message our handyman or a cleaner and say, hey, they create a task, say, I need you to fix this. We're never involved. So this allows us to remove ourselves and be in a position where it's running itself. And then I get my time back. Of course, we talked about Monday, Minoan. So this is actually a free, it's a website that consolidates a bunch of furniture. So let's say you're gonna set up a property, you're gonna buy a bunch of furniture. This connects to, I don't know, 200 plus retailers, and you get a discount. So if you go to their website directly to the vendor, it'll be more expensive. You go to Minoan, it's cheaper. So they consolidate all the ordering. I think one of the biggest pains is when you're setting up a property, if you want to do it remotely, you send it to your cleaner or you send it to a handyman or somebody who's in charge of it in a different market. Things disappear. So this allows you to kind of track where everything is. It's all in one place versus Amazon. You're looking, you have to figure out where it went. So anyways, that's Postfully. So this is basically a here for getting them essentially a book that allows them to know what's going on, what things they can do, get familiar with the property. And so the goal is, again, dummy proof it so it makes it really easy. But who's stayed at an Airbnb and who's received the guidebook? So it's like a mix. So I would say like I've stayed at maybe 15 Airbnbs, and of those 3. So this is an opportunity, and it frees up your time and makes a better customer experience. Of course, you got the automation with like, yes.
Can you upload videos to Postfully?
Yes. Yeah, so you can. So we want to basically, any common questions you've ever received, we want to put that in Hostfully. So we create videos specifically around, this is how you turn on the hot tub. You'd be surprised at how many people have never used a hot tub, don't know what the buttons are, how to turn it on and off. And so we do a demonstration video on a hot tub, so that way they can just click on it. How to open the schlag on code. Push the button, hit unlock. Like there's a lot of people that are tech challenged or have just never been introduced to this stuff. So how to connect to the Wi-Fi, all those sort of things. So yeah, you incorporate videos as well. Yeah, Ring. So the Ring floodlight, who's coming in and out. The goal is really, it's more of a deterrent more than anything. You never really look into it as far as what's going on unless you need to. So, and then Slack is kind of like a manager where you just manage all your activities. We use it for our VAs to communicate with our cleaners, with our handymen, and we don't necessarily need to be involved. And then you can kind of tag people. So, and then create different categories. So it's like for repairs, it's in this category. For customer complaints, it's in this category. Relay is just banking. So just like the accounting piece. This allows you to set up multiple bank accounts. So you can set up 5 bank accounts. And what we do is money comes in, and then we distribute it amongst a bunch of different accounts. One for profit distribution. So there's a book called Profit First. And a lot of it says to pay yourself first, because if you don't, the money will disappear. And you want to be able to manage that money and set aside money for taxes, money for operations. And so you distribute it. Relay allows you to do that. It's an online account, and it's really easy. And active campaign. Over time, what you're going to have to do is build a business, whether you're reaching out to investors or to setting up like your own website and campaigns around prior guests. So that's basically, you create email marketing campaigns. So that's going to be something over time. Trying to see if there's anything else I missed. But any questions on any of the tech stack? Again, I feel like each one could be like a mini class, and it would take a long time. So that's why I'm just trying to do like a high level overview of them. But any questions on anything, like whether you're new or semi-experienced? Yeah. All right, so I think this is just kind of give you guys a high level overview of everything. Think about how you can grow your own business. Airbnbs, I think there's just a lot of talk about them, but if you just have like the right processes in place, be a problem solver, think about underwriting and operations. You optimize those two things, and there's a lot of room for profit. And I think that's why with Airbnb, there's a big profit margin, because there's a lot of inconsistency around how to operate and how to choose a property. Like, for example, if long-term rentals, there's not much variance because there's so much less risk. You kind of know in a particular area what a property will rent for. You can't really impact the rents too much. With Airbnb, there's way more levers for you to be able to optimize. And so if you're in a position to do that, you can make a lot of profit. And then you can start from first bringing the money or having a particular role. You don't have to do it yourself. And that's kind of like my story. I was able to leverage other people in different ways. And now I'm kind of in a position where I'm slowly trying to remove myself and kind of build out this business. And hopefully that encourages you guys to do the same. Here's my link tree. So you have an analyzer. There's also an Airbnb like starter kit, like so per room, if you want to know like how to budget a room, how much it costs, I'll have that in there. I also have a link to my podcast. And my podcast is Find Your Freedom. So the goal behind it is we interview real estate investors and mostly entrepreneurs, but asking them about their roadmap, and hopefully that can inspire you to think about what your situation is, and if you want to take away one thing from the story of one of the guests and implement it within your own life. So it's called Find Your Freedom. I think it's like a top 3 percentile podcast. So it's growing. So that's a little shameless plug. So, and then here's the book, Hospitable Host. So this basically, in the industry of short-term rentals, this has like some of the top influencers in the space. So if you look at some of these names, they all have different stories as far as like how they got into short-term rentals, and they have little tips and things like that. So it's called Hospitable Host. It'll be in the link tree as well. I'm gonna get this one out, so I'm just gonna throw it. Okay. Yeah. And I guess I just want to open this up for any questions. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So you're going to ask 10 operators that are all going to give you 10 different answers, right? So I think it's kind of up to you. So I would say a few things. When you look at the algorithm for Airbnb, one of them is going to be customer experience, or like value, and I'm trying to think of all other ones. But the algorithm is very sensitive to the scores. And so it penalizes you a lot. So we track it on a weekly basis, and the properties where we get a 4 or we get a 3-star or certain categories are hit, we also see that hit in the algorithm where it goes from page 1 to page 10 or page 1 to page 5. So that kind of impacts our decision making. So traditionally, a lot of experienced people are going to say, eat the cost or let it be. But I think it just depends on the context of your place. If they break a house rule, there's also a retaliation rule where in the messaging, or you penalize them, or you charge them, or you kick them out. Those are all like different options, or you let it be. So it depends. Different things. So hard to say. Yeah. So for us particularly, we don't look at because of this now, we don't look at the cameras if there's a couple over, as long as there's not a noise complaint. So there's another item that we use is called Minute, and it's actually a noise decibels, then we get notified. And at that point, that's an issue. So I think if it's like a people issue, I'm not gonna sweat it too much. As long as they give me a good review and I'm getting paid, I'm gonna look the other way. So I think it just depends. Yeah. Yes.
Looking into Josh's recently,
Yes.
I saw that there was like a permitting process.
Yes.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. So they implemented a new process of last year. So before, you could run an Airbnb there, and they never communicated with the actual platforms. Now in the platforms, if you want to make a property live, you have a permit number, or else it doesn't allow you to make that property go live. So I was guilty of this. We didn't get our permit yet, and we just want to make it go live because we want to make money, and we're willing to take that risk. But now you actually have to go through a process, and it's more expensive. So the application process is $1,400. It's annual. Before it used to be biannual. There was no cap before. Now there's a cap of 2. So it falls under the San Bernardino County. So Joshua Tree would be, so it's Joshua Tree, unincorporated Yucca Valley, which is Yucca Mesa, Big Bear City, Landers, all those properties. So once you hit the cap, you can't have any more. So they were trying to slow down the market because there's so much investment money that went into Joshua Tree that that was their way of slowing down the market. And what it's done is prices have dropped a lot. So right now is actually a great time to buy. So people are afraid of Joshua Tree. And one, because so it used to take us maybe 4 to 8 weeks to get a permit. Now it's 8 to 12 weeks to get a permit. So it takes about 3 months. So there's a little bit more holding costs. But I think there's a lot of desperate operators wanting to sell, and they're willing to take a significant loss. So I'll give you an example. There's a tiny home in our portfolio. We paid $530,000 for. It's a 2-bedroom. It's called the Mars House. I should like show it. It's a pretty cool house. We paid $530,000. Negotiations with the builder because they have another one in a similar area, and I'm gonna get it for $420,000. So I already know the numbers, what it's gonna gross, and my goal is to also build out a pool on that property and make it like a top performing list, getting at a discount. And I think there's a lot of examples of that, where there's listings out there and you can take advantage. And so as people are running away from Joshua Tree, this is my feedback on Joshua Tree. A lot of people went in there. They all did the mid-century look. If you buy a home that's a 2-bed to a 4-bed, you're not going to make money because everybody has the same look. Everybody does the same flip. Everybody's using the same furniture. It's hard to differentiate those. But if you get like a tiny home, or you create some sort of amenity that's not a hot tub, that's a pool, that's some sort of alternative experience. I have a friend who did like a rock climbing wall. He paid $5K for it. You do a game room in a garage. We did a game room in one of our listings. It was a flip that we thought would kill it, and then it was like really low occupancy. We bought all them, added all amenities. It didn't do well. Game room, we spent $12K to convert the garage, and that game room now it's like 90+% occupied month after month. So you really have to differentiate it. But if it's your traditional 4-bed, they're not going to do well because there's too many like the copycats. Everybody copied each other, same furniture, same look, and those aren't going to do well. And those are the ones that are on the market. So you can get those at a discount. But if you just convert the garage, spend 10, 20K, do something different to them, add some sort of special menu, you're in a great position for it to be successful. And then using those tools to optimize and I think that's like the next tier of like sophistication when you're operating your business. Yes.
I have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Do you have those to the tiny home on wheels?
Foes?
Those, THOW.
Oh no, I don't. So this is the other part of the ordinance so Joshua Tree back then they used to allow for like yurts and airstreams. They changed it on a permanent foundation. So, but to answer your question, I know there's other unregulated markets out of state, and they're doing like the glam sites and they're doing things like that, and the cost is low, and so I know there is a big appetite. So a strategy for that, I would say, is, and I can email this to you later. I have a list, but look for the median home price 400,000 or 300 something thousand across the country. Find the top 20 states that have the median price below whatever the median price is. Then Google like attractions in that state, and then look up Airbnbs. And you'll see that there's a lot of Airbnbs that are not optimized in markets that are unknown, that are not the major markets. And if the regulations allow it, then buy the land, or there's a lot more upside in those sort of productions where there's a development deal. I know somebody who bought in Knoxville, and he bought something on 20 acres. He did a search. So you can do a filter search within your search in a particular market, and then you can target something like that. And he's basically building, it's one home, he's rehabbing, he's doing a campground. He found out that if you have a campground under 10, that there's no regulations with like septic. And he did the underwriting and said that he's going to, that there's going to be, he purchased it under contract, I think for $320,000. And after he does the renovations on the property, I think he's going to spend like $150,000. It's supposed to be worth $1 million. So there's opportunities like that are out there. I think regulations, but I'll start with determining the state and then kind of going down further. And again, that's another like subclass that we could go into. And yeah, California is going to be a little more challenging, but that same he bought 10 acres in Joshua Tree, and they're doing something similar where they're going to do a campground in Joshua Tree. So, and again, they're starting it from scratch. Opportunities there, but I think, find a money partner, find somebody with experience, and somebody with time that can combine it. Any more questions?
What market are you looking at right now, and what do you suggest is a good market right now to invest in?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we have somebody that we work with that does acquisitions. All they do is underwriting. So they look at 10, 20 markets. So we use Price Labs, and you can buy the data. It's $10, and you pick a particular market and you kind of do a deep dive. But to answer your question, Arkansas in general has like become popular just because of the price points. So there's an area, it's called Bentonville, which is Walmart's like headquarters, and so there's a lot of money being put in there. I guess there's a guy who runs Bass Pro. He's some billionaire, and he's putting a lot of money into that area for like some massive resort. Wherever he goes is basically, I think a lot of infrastructure ends up following. So that's like an example. There is, so I was talking earlier, West River Gorge is the newest national park that's been recognized as a national park. So that's in West Virginia. And the price point's there. It's $150,000 to $300,000. So again, price points are low, risk levels low, and there's room. It's early in the cycle where there's less sophisticated operators, and the way you can determine that is you Google, you find a market, look at the listings, look at the sophistication of the pictures, because if they don't have professional pictures, that's usually a sign that there's opportunity for growth. So that's one thing we do. Of course, reading the reviews. But yeah, West River Gorge is kind of an area where there's not a lot of listings. The sophistication of the operations are very low. So that allows us to kind of have upside with, one, people coming in at some point, and two, being able to out-operate them. But yeah, so you can go to the traditional markets, maybe less risky, a little bit less upside. The price points are getting a little higher, get your feet wet. So it just depends on your risk tolerance and what you're willing to do. But those are two markets that we're looking into.
I can't remember the list of properties with the price points, but you generally go lower price point, percentage return based on like the cash return.
Yeah, so Let me see if I have that calculator thing. Okay. But yeah, so I think it's going to depend on the investor. So for me, my preference. Okay. Anyways, so my preference is cash on cash returns. So there's also something called like cash on equity return. That's a term. So there's another calculator with a lot of equity in a property. You're also trying to calculate, does it make sense to keep that equity in that property, or does it make more sense based on the amount of return you're getting on a monthly basis, or does it make sense to pull money out and reinvest that money into something else? But for me, I'm looking at cash on cash, minimum of 20% return. And that doesn't include appreciation. That doesn't include tax write-offs. That's just straight up cash on cash return on investment. There's a calculator which is if you can get your money back within 5 years, that's like a traditional rule that a lot of operators use. So it's that 20% cash on cash allows you to get your full capital back in 5 years and then reinvest that into something else. So that's kind of what we typically use, even in this market. Yes?
When you say cash on cash, do you mean increased value too, or just?
No, so that's not even appreciation. No, that's just strictly based on your investment and what you're making. So if you invested $100,000, it should be grossing you $20,000 annually is kind of the goal as far as like profit. So you're looking for something in that sort of.
Once you get your cash out, how do you determine cash on cash value?
Yeah, so there's another calculator, and so I'm not 100% sure there's like an appreciation calculator, but I think what we're targeting specifically is the cash on cash returns on an annual basis based on the cash flow that you're getting based on the investment that you put in. But I'll give you an example. So I bought my home in Anaheim Hills in 2010. So originally our goal was we're going to try to accelerate and pay off. We had the Dave Ramsey approach, which is no debt. So we had 12 years left on our mortgage. We basically refinanced to make it a 15-year, and then we had 12 years left. And then we were at a crossroads in 2018 where we were like, hey, should we try to pay it off? And that way we're financially free, or should we reinvest? We had decided to pull that $150,000 out. We did a 30-year mortgage, which allowed us to improve our debt to income ratio, which allowed us to qualify for loans. So my wife qualified for 2 investment loans for short-term rentals. I qualified for 2 separately. So we have a total of 5, 2 each in our primary. But with that 150,000, I invested that into those 5 properties, and that 150,000 is probably turned into like $1 million. So I think that's like the power of whether you leave your money in to a deal or you pull it out. And so that was at the time. So just some things to kind of think about as far as like when you're being creative around like how to leverage your money or equity within your home, whether it's like a home equity line of credit or refinance. And of course, refinance is expensive now, and it's a little bit different. Even for flips, I think there's like different regulations. Min's not here. I know he was explaining that, but just some things to think about. Yes.
What type of corporate structure do you recommend?
What sort of what structure?
Corporate structure.
Corporate structure. So corporate structure. So maybe define that for me a little bit more, like as in like an org chart, like for running the business, or just like between partners.
No.
Oh, LLCs. Okay. Oh, gotcha. Okay. So that's another class in itself. So I think there's going to be different. So part of it is going to depend on your strategy. Do you want to have one property or multiple properties? And even when you ask different operators, they're going to give you a different answer. So there's some operators. Alex was here last month, and he talked about how he just has an umbrella policy. I think he owns 7 properties, I'm going to say, 7 Airbnbs. And what he did was he didn't get an LLC per property. So I think part of that is going to be, one, looking at your net worth and determining does it make sense, or if you just get an umbrella policy. Because an umbrella policy is going to cost you I don't know, like let's say $500 or $1,000 a year, somewhere in that range. So the cost of an umbrella policy is not that much. When you're doing Airbnb, Airbnb offers a $1 million policy. You have your own home policy, which is your $500,000, let's say $1 million policy. So you're already insured for $2 million. And then you get an umbrella, let's say that's another $1 million. So is your net worth in excess of that? And if it's not, I'm more in the side of I'd rather get an umbrella. But there are some people who are, I've even talked to, who they want to do the one LLC per property or one LLC for multiple properties. I think it just depends on your risk tolerance. And the traditional answer is going to be get an LLC per, but I disagree with that because a lot of people don't understand the risk component of if somebody dies in your, I'll give you an example. Somebody gets run over. So I had a neighbor, or I have a family friend, she ran over her neighbor. So that person was white and she backed into him. The person was like, I don't know, 80 years old or something somebody in that age group. They broke their hip. They had to have hip surgery. They only had a $100,000 policy for their home policy. For their auto policy. And what ended up happening is they were scared that their house is paid off. They have all these assets. And long story short, they accepted a $100,000 policy and everybody moved on. But I think there was this big fear that they're going to lose all these assets. Most insurance companies are looking to settle. And most attorneys, because I used to work in the insurance world. So before I was in the insurance world, I worked in the injury world where people get hurt all the time. And I used to manage a department that negotiated with injuries. So the Larry H. Parkers, got made $2.1 million, right? Like that's such an extreme case. And even in the extreme case, it was only $2.1 million. So long-winded answer, but to answer you, I think I'm more on the side of I don't do the separate, but yeah.
I think that was a great question and a great explanation.
Yeah.
The reason why I think we all do this is that we are trying to make money, right?
Yep, 100%. And it's expensive.
Is $1,000 a year.
Yes.
Will push you out $100,000. And it's just a
Yes.
thing like conflict.
Yes.
I was recommended for the rest of it. That was to get each property that you own.
Yeah.
Into what you call a real estate privacy trust.
Yep.
Now, I have tried this and I'm actually in the process of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But because, and then you can get a trustee or, it basically becomes like a irrevocable trust or whatever you probably
Yep.
estate trust company, right? But it actually shields you and your estate,
Yeah.
everything else. That's what I've been told. I haven't experienced it, but
Yeah.
that's what I've been told.
Yeah.
The best thing you do is put your property into a trust. You don't need a
Yep.
you don't need a separate LLC for every property.
Yeah.
Let's say about $300,000 to $500,000 of equity per property. I mean, if you only have $10,000 of equity in property,
Yeah.
you don't need 10 LLCs for 10 properties.
Yeah.
And if you have $1 million property paid off, yes, probably under something.
That's what I
Because you put things into a trust, and another thing you do is, I don't know if you do it this way, but
Yeah.
you have a property management LLC that manages your Airbnb.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that gives you more profit, more, because you're holding, you buy the Airbnb,
Yeah.
you buy the apartment building, you put it into an LLC, but you have another LLC that does purely property management, so it's not holding the property.
Yep.
It just conducts the day-to-day businesses, it collects the money, and then sends it down to the whole company. So that other
Yeah.
also shows about a whole lot.
So yeah. So I'll explain that. I think that's a great point. So we do have a couple LLCs which are managing LLCs, but they don't. So that's for tax purposes, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But to echo what you said, if you have an LLC, you have to have a tax return, and so times each property, it adds up. So that's a lot of capital that, of course, it's the write-off that you may not necessarily need to spend. And then the trust piece, 100%. I think definitely look into like an attorney that can write a trust for you. We have a trust, but I got to update mine because a lot has changed. But I think that's important. I think, and those are questions I don't know all the answers to, but I think those are great things to like consult with an attorney as far as like what the best structure is. From a operation standpoint, so when we run our taxes, there is a holding, so we have an LLC, which is basically like a managing LLC. So that managing LLC, we put the properties under. So, so we run taxes that way. So it's for tax purposes. And then this managing LLC is owned by another company. So we have a separate, like I have a separate LLC, and my partner has a separate LLC. And that way, S Corp. And that way, what essentially what we're doing is we're funneling some of the money into, like some of the income, instead of just drawing money, we're funneling money into our own personal S Corps, and then we're reducing ourselves, which reduces, so let's say 100,000, we say we pull 100,000 in, and I feel like I'm not explaining this correctly, but we pull 100,000 in, and then with that, let's say we create a salary, so the income, we create a salary of 50K, and then we are taxed on that versus the full draw. And that's kind of the structure that's been we've been advised by our CPA to do. And so that's kind of, you know, long-term, like something to consider. Talking to a CPA around structuring what is the best way as you're starting to earn income and how to funnel it where you're reducing the taxable income on it. So we ended up also like creating a cleaning company. So we realized we have 20 properties in Joshua Tree. It's very hard to source cleaners and handymen. So we're like, hey, why don't we just create our own? So I'll give you an example. We charge, let's say to make the numbers easy, $100 cleaning that we typically would pay to a cleaner. Instead, what we do is we charge ourselves $100, and then we have a structure with the cleaners where we pay them 55%. So now for each clean, we're pocketing $45. So what's actually happened is we're now profiting. The cleaning company is becoming profitable in the sense that this is another source of income. So, and what we do is then we just hire out these cleaners on an hourly basis. Originally, we were doing it on an hourly basis, but now we're doing per clean basis as an employee for this separate cleaning LLC that we have. So as you scale, if you can create different parts of the business and create infrastructures, it's just other channels of income that you can create for yourself. So imagine the 20 properties, and each of them have like 10 to 15 cleanings or turns, and the little profit that adds up for each sort of listing. So it almost becomes a, you know, I'm trying to remember her name, something Sanchez. She's just like the business. Cody Sanchez, right? Like she's like, buy those like, you know, like the non-sexy businesses. And so it's funny because the cleaning company has become almost like a not sexy business that's become a very a cash producing business that's without having to necessarily put capital into it. So that's kind of what we, and you source those employees through Facebook Marketplace and or referral. Now we've grown the company where I think it's like, I'm gonna say, I don't know, 8 cleaners or 10 cleaners or something like that. It's in the database. It's in there, yeah. So, but we've grown the cleaning company, and that's just another avenue of income. And also that cleaning company, the person who runs it is family with the handyman that we use. And so we've been able to kind of consolidate all those things in Joshua Tree, so that way we have more control versus having to look for help, because that was the biggest challenge going out there is you're on the desert, a lot of gentrification happened, and there's not as many, I guess like the local staff isn't as staff, meaning handyman, cleaners are a little bit harder to come by. Any more questions on anything?
Are most
Yeah.
of your listings still mainly through Airbnb, or are you guys trying to do like direct booking?
Yeah, so that's kind of the next step. So I literally have a call next week to launch. So we have our website ready. We just need to create like an email marketing campaign. We've been collecting emails. So there's a software I didn't put up there It's called StayFi. And what happens is, if you log into the Wi-Fi, you have to input your name, your number, or your name, your email. You have to put your indexing info. But what we've done is, through all the properties, we've probably collected, I don't know, 1,500 emails or whatever it is over the past, I don't know, 4 months. And as you're building that database, then you create an email marketing campaign through a CRM. And the goal is you notify people of some sort of special event. Like, hey, this event's coming on. You should book because we're going to book fast. And the best customer is a repeat customer because they're going to come back. Or they've already been in the market. And so email marketing is actually a very effective tool that is underutilized, and that allows you to also save fees, and it's cheaper for the guests, and you make more money. So we haven't implemented it yet completely, but we've collected the emails. We have the website up finally. Now we just got to do the email marketing campaign piece, which hopefully we can leverage like a chat GPT, and that can maybe make it more efficient. But the goal is to leverage either an intern or a VA that can create that for us, and then do all the research. So that, again, we're removed from it, and we can create email marketing campaigns for the different markets. Hey, these are the XY reasons why you should come visit, Joshua Tree, oh, hey, this music festival is happening this weekend, or whatever it is. Coachella is coming, let's, whatever it is. So go to the Smoky Mountains for this hot rod event. And so it's just hiring that out. So I think that's where we're at. We're basically in the.
Once you master it, you'll come back and teach us all about it.
Yeah. So that should be coming pretty soon. But yeah, I have a call actually next week with. There's a person whose name is Mark Simpson, Boostly. They're the biggest face of direct marketing, and they're basically helping us with the website and everything. And he's in the book, so he's actually one of the authors of the book. So, but he's like the biggest known person in that space. Yeah, he's like has a monopoly on it. So yeah, any more questions? Was that helpful?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe like one takeaway. Could somebody share like a takeaway about today? Yes. Are you medium? Are you a medium or a large? Well, wait, what? Well, actually, I don't have. I'm gonna give you the book. So here's a hospitable host book. Well, yeah, go ahead and share your.
I think automation and scaling, that's my
Hand
challenge.
that back.
And I get told them many times, the only thing you have to scale, you won't be like winning 4 hours down the day. I thought you just to spend more time with the family, and that's right. So I think that was a big takeaway, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think the automation piece.
Automation of beer, that's the value.
Yes, and the thing is I suck at that stuff, right? So it's I've had to learn it, but my partner, he's awesome at that. So, he's what does he say? He's freaking the spreadsheets. Yeah, so like he's really good with the spreadsheets and automation, and that was that's how we grew our business. He was good at that. I was good at finding the deal, finding the partner, connecting the partner, and then we had our other partner who was doing the operation. So, yes, sir.
What was your typical, or today, what's your typical profit/revenue share with partners that you bring in as property? Or does it really depend on
Yeah, it's going to depend on the structures. Like from a distribution standpoint, it's anywhere from like a 0, like this past month, 0 to maybe like I'm going to say like right under $2,000 for the month. So strictly for the partner. So
individual partners per property now.
Yeah.
What's your typical percentage split that
Okay.
come up with partners?
Yeah, I think the easiest one is going to be 50-50. So like from a structure standpoint, it's like a 50-50. I would say half of them are that, but they vary anywhere from 10% to 50%. The last few that we did was 70-30, 70 to the partner. And part of that was also because based on where we were with interest rates and declining performance across the industry. So year over year, performance is down 20%, like at an industry level. So, and then within our portfolio, it's anywhere from no change to 40%. So there's quite a variance depending on the property, depending on how optimized it is, and depending on like the competition in the market. So it's going to vary.
Is
like
that with the partner funding 100% of the deal or just splitting?
Yeah, that's what them like. So again, it's going to vary, but yeah. And it also depends. Like, was the interest rate at the time when we did it at the 3% or was it at the 6%? So I think that all plays into it. But all the ones that had like the 3%, 3 to 4%, they're all like consistently making really good money, like month after month. Like yeah.
How do you determine the rental price? Is it by comp or how do you?
Yeah, so rental price. So you're going to use like a bunch of different tools that are. We use Price Labs, and we do a comp search. So what we do is, in there you can, let's say you buy the data for Joshua Tree. You put 3 beds, and then you can do filters. So you do filters on what we do specifically is filters around. It has to have a certain score. It has to have a certain amount of reviews. It has to have something called dynamic pricing, which means that they're consistently adjusting the pricing. So we want something that's equivalent in terms of performance and like their amenities, and then we will get the average and the mean of that. And then there's also another database which has like percentiles of the whole market. So there's like 25%, 50%, 75%, and 90%. But so we'll typically be in the 50 to 75% range for pricing, and then we'll also compare that to our filter that we have, which would be like the average median of like actual comps, because we want to make sure that the comps match. Yeah, so we try to kind of underprice. And so again, our strategy is we price a little bit more aggressive, where if it's further out, we want people to book at a higher price. So we don't want to be booked out, because I think sometimes being booked out 100%, people think it's a good thing, but it means it's a bad thing because you're basically underpricing your property. The property I showed that we did a partnership on, we were booked out 100% for the first 6 months. But I think part of it was booked out 3 months in advance. And I think we underpriced it, even though it was already killing it. And I think it's, there's like a fine line, and it depends on the market, how to do the customization and optimizing.
Thank you so much for sharing this, because I'm the mom and pop shop.
Yep.
I'm the one that just like, this is the key, thank you for coming. So I learned a lot about how to really operate it. So thank you very much for sharing this.
Are you small or medium?
I think medium is better.
Oh, well, too bad, because I'm going to give you a small. And I'm gonna give you the medium because you asked. I forgot. Yeah. So, cool. Any other questions?
So I'm not questioning.
Yeah.
TikTok is kind of feels good to know that you guys don't have it all like figured out.
No.
You know, I know you
Still a
guys
student. Yeah.
appreciate everything that, like your podcast videos.
Yeah.
Everything you guys do, but it's nice to know, like,
Yeah.
okay, you guys are still trying to figure it out as well. We're not.
Yeah. No. It's and I think there's that act like they know it all, they don't. I mean, I think it's trial and error, and I think we've been able to accelerate what we know because we've taken on a lot of properties, and then we've been able to test out different things, and even
What we go through, like,
right.
we learn something every time. Like, okay,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
gonna take it from here.
For
now
sure.
Know what to fix in our structural goals for the house.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's learn as you go. And I think there's a lot of like trial and error, and every market's gonna be a little bit different. And what we thought worked really well, then we find out it didn't work well, and we had to do something else. And it just being able to pivot, look at the data. So we have a KPI tracker. So it's like KPIs, like key performance indicators.
What do you use for that?
So what we use is we'll look at like lead time, 7-day lead time, 30-day lead time. We want to make sure that within the 7 days, we're trying to get 100%. Within 30 days, I'm trying to remember the percentage, but we want to be at a certain percentage. We look at reviews. So our VAs, we have them fill out any bad review we've ever had and what the feedback was. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to assess, okay, how can we be better? What can we change? There's another, I'm trying to see what else is in our KPI tracker. Anything that we've done refunds on. So we want to try to identify trends. So if we've ever given a refund, we have it on this KPI tracker based on the property and the reason and the dollar amount. And so we want to just identify trends, trying to, yeah, I mean, we run it like a business, like a corporate business, and then we provide feedback to our cleaners. So if we have bad feedback on a property 3 times, we fire the cleaner. So I think it's cleaning is like such an important component of it, and it can make or break your business. And they're the eyes and ears, but it's setting the proper standards for those cleaners. And I think sometimes people just expect cleaners to know what they're doing, but I think you got to create standards around what the standard is. We hire somebody who goes and checks the cleaners. So we hire somebody in Joshua Tree, and what they do is after the cleaner cleans, they go to the property and they do spot checks, and then they get feedback. And so that allows us to optimize the listings so that it optimizes the algorithm. Optimizes the customer service scores, so it optimizes the algorithm. And so we take that very seriously, because if that's impacted, it impacts the bottom line. And we've seen some properties go from grossing like a variance of like $1,000 to $3,000 because of the customer service score. So that's why we take that very seriously. And we're willing to pay a little bit more to somebody locally to check the properties so we can give feedback on the spot. That also allows us to set the standard, because now we have the cleaning company, and it's, so we'll penalize the cleaner. We'll say, okay, you're not getting paid for that clean because you didn't, we're losing money, or we're having to pay back a partial refund to the guest, and we're charging that partial refund to you. So that creates a higher level of accountability. And again, that can't work for all markets. We've been able to scale where that's kind of like what we do.
Okay, a round of applause.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. And we would also like to give a huge thank you again to our sponsor, R2R Business Services. So go to them for tax and any notary services that you might need. Thank you to everyone for coming. Thank you for everyone who tuned in online tonight. And also, I ask if you guys could all go into your Meetup app. We have already announced speaker for next month. We'll be having Evelyn Ling. She is a self-storage investor. She has eight properties, 5 multifamily properties, and 1 warehouse, and it's all across the states. So if you're interested in learning more about that, she's definitely a good person to come learn about self-storage investments. And thank you to everyone for coming again. And we'll open up this time for everyone to network together. Thank you.